Hello, my name is Kim Murphy. I have filed more than 100 Freedom of Information Act requests, and I'm starting an online discussion group to discuss compliance and to include exposing agencies that do not comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Anything from stonewalling or misinterpreting requests to downright fraud against Freedom of Information Act requesters. And the forum can be found at reddit.com. Here's the address, FOIA compliance, reddit.com /r/FOIA compliance. On August 23rd, 2022, I received a response for one of my Freedom of Information Act requests that I had filed in May of 2022. The letter said potentially responsive documents were located, and these documents are being reviewed to determine whether they are responsive to your request. About 2 years later, I was a bit upset. They had made a lot of errors in other cases, and I told them the responsive documents were never provided, even though the search was done on August 23rd, 2022. No records, no final response letter. It had been about 2 years. So I dug a little deeper and requested the case history. So these internal case history records show that on August 23rd, 2022, there were 733 possible email records responsive to the very first search number 1. So a few days later, on August 25th, 2022, they thought maybe a few or several of the emails, several is the word they used, may be B5 material, meaning of 733 records, several, which usually means less than 10, might be exempt under the Freedom of Information Act. The second important thing to notice is that many of these emails were from LEG, meaning the Office of Chief Counsel for the United States Secret Service. And so what they're really doing here is they're saying, we're going to talk to this person at the Office of Chief Counsel and ask him if his own emails are B5 exempt material. So the next entries, as the dates move forward in time, they seem to struggle with this a little bit. Once again, should I withhold anything else, is what this one is saying. Then it says the file is on hold, file is being reviewed, email to check the status, and here's where things get a bit fraudulent. So on September 12th, 2022, they put in the official records that I had filed an administrative appeal. I did not. This is a bogus entry, manufactured for their own fraudulent purposes. I did it not just once, but if you look at the logs here, they kind of did it again. And then everything seems to be like someone else had to review that same alleged administrative appeal and had to see all these entries. And then as they transferred the file to legal counsel, this other person had to see that as well. So this is important. Legal counsel, LEG, Office of Chief Counsel for the United States Secret Service, had to also say that they received an appeal. So it's not just one person. Multiple persons had to have seen this and committed fraudulent activity. And so if you look at these other entries here, we can see here that they're changing the dates to some of the previous entries in September of 2023. So look at what that appeal did. There's an appeal that they're alleging occurred on September 14, 2022. Then a year later, a year goes by between September 15, 2022, September 28, 2023, in which they did nothing. So if you're the United States Secret Service and you want to stonewall, delay, commit fraud, what they did is they said, we received an appeal. Now everything's on hold, assigned to someone else, and we caused a delay over a year to not provide him the records. And as the time goes by, it still gets fishy because they're changing the dates of what they did in the previous time frames in 2023 for these 2022 dates. Now, if there was an appeal, you would really see appeal disposition, appeal approved, appeal granted, maybe partially approved, partially granted. There's no record of an adjudication of an appeal. All that happened is of those 733 records, they released 0, found 0, and provided 0 to the requester on September 29th, 2023. So of those 733 records, it is labeled everything as 0 after pretending that they had received an appeal. The other thing that's fishy, fraudulent, is that they didn't issue a final response letter on this day. I have reviewed dozens of Secret Service Freedom of Information Act cases. If they close a case or issue a final disposition, you would see sent final response letter to requester. So they're kind of keeping this all under the rug, not even letting me know they found 0 records after finding 733 possible records, after not adjudicating an appeal, which they manufactured in the first place, which created a delay of more than a year. And once again, here's that year. They manufactured an appeal from September 15, 2022 to cause a delay to September 28, 2023. And the date they received the appeal was September 14th. So to clarify the time frame, a year later after that other year, which is the second year, I told them, wait a minute, I never got the responsive documents, even though your search was done a couple years ago. So now 2 years go by, still hear nothing. Please provide the records. Now, if you're going to receive this email, this might alert you, wait a minute, we messed up Kim Murphy's request. He never got a final response letter. Let's review and research. But once they received this email, they still didn't reply. They didn't reply saying, we made a mistake of fact. So I finally got them to provide a final response and let me know what happened officially. And what they said, 0 pages were released and 0 pages were withheld in their entirety. And I think this is consistent with the fraudulent activity because they're not telling me what was withheld. How much did you find totally? And how much is there? So before I show you the few email records they sent me, instead of 723 email records, and in which several of them may have been exempt under Exemption B5, they sent me just a few records, none of which show they are to or from LEG. And so another indication that if they were not committing fraud, well, either the number of records withheld, which, okay, we withheld, let's say, 600 email records, and or we withheld, 38 pages of material, and that's why I wouldn't see any emails from LEG. So when you look at the actual files here, we were expecting some emails from LEG, the United States Secret Service Office of Chief Counsel. And so this is just a field agent from Philadelphia, and they're redacting a lot of the most important stuff. but we didn't get any of the emails from LHC. We got 18 pages of a lot of redacted, insignificant email records. I didn't provide the attachments to this, by the way, to me, that were attached to this shared folder. Now, it looks like these communications are actually about the request, not necessarily about the records requested. In other words, these are the communications about the Freedom of Information Act request itself, not about the resulting records I'm actually requesting. So if you count the number of emails per page, it looks like it's about 1 or 2 emails per page, maybe 3. At 2 emails a page, 18 pages, that would be 36 email records. And so there would still be missing over 600 email records unaccounted for in the possible 733 email records, which is a strong indication of fraud committed by the United States Secret Service. Now, if you want to know, I want to know how much they were withholding. So I said, wait a minute, guys, fix the final response letter. Let me know how many records you withheld. I'm thinking if they would fix that, and that response letter said we withheld, let's say, 50 pages, 70 pages, 100 pages of email records, that would make sense. So let me show you the amended final response letter that they sent me after I told them, you told me 0 pages were withheld. So their letter is not consistent with a good faith response. If there's 18 pages released at 2 or 3 email records for each page, that is between 36 and 54 possible email records total. So if I received a maximum 54 total email records of 733 minus 10, the several at a maximum that were exempt, of the remaining 723 possible email records, I got a maximum of 54. That means I'm still missing over 600 email records that are unaccounted for in the amended final response letter provided by the United States Secret Service, which shows 0 pages were withheld. That means they're saying they didn't withhold anything, any pages whatsoever. Now that's still unaccounted for 600 plus email records, which might be 200 pages of information withheld. So this number should have been perhaps 200 pages were withheld. So the way they're falsifying the records here, inconsistently, pretending that there was an appeal, is indicative of agency fraud committed by the United States Secret Service. So you could find the actual document that shows all those database entries. It's called the Action History Report. It's on the FOIA compliance forum here, and you find the post, with the case ending in 0415, and then the first link in the post is download the actual file itself and take a look at this. And so that document is downloadable. Take a look. I think you'll find some other things besides the points that were mentioned in this video that are consistent with fraud. So let's collaborate, team up, work together to make sure federal agencies start complying with the Freedom of Information Act.